Hey everybody, JD King here, and welcome to this week's edition of the ETA Files, hosted by the one and only Ryan Pelton. It's going to be fun. Thank you very much.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me this week on ETA Files. We have a special guest this week. This is awesome because first time we've gotten someone from the UK on the program. Excited, ladies and gentlemen, from Brighton, England, the one and only JD King. Thanks for coming on, buddy.
Oh, my pleasure, Ryan. It's exciting to be the first UK guy on here, so yeah, go easy on me, man.
Oh Lord, I've been reaching out to so many of your brothers over in the UK, and I wrote a Facebook post actually yesterday. I said I think email's dead because if I don't have your phone number, I'm going to try to email you or get a hold of you on social media. Some of these guys, though, I mean, like yourself, you've got a massive following, and it's hard to keep up. And admittedly, I bet you probably run into this. Sometimes all those there's some crazy messages you get on Messenger and whatnot, right?
Oh man, yeah, going back to the email thing, I'm old school. I've been doing this since 2002, so it was all kind of emails and phone calls back then, so always a good way to find me. But yeah, I mean social media, wow, it's great, right? It's such a
Yeah.
great way to reach people that we didn't have when we started. I don't know what year you started out, Ryan, but obviously it was a totally different world back then. But yeah, I mean it's good and bad, right? Because you
Yeah.
you can connect with people and you can feel that greater connection with Elvis fans and ETA fans of your own work better than you could before. But at the same time, you can't disconnect in the same way as you could before.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's sometimes you get people who just keep messaging and messaging and they're asking you questions and questions. And that's great. But you have to draw a line somewhere and say, okay, where's this going from just very nice fan of what I'm doing and I'm happy to because I'm so lucky to do what I do, right? I don't take any of it for granted. It's not about me, it's about Elvis. So I want to just make everyone happy. Where does it go cross that line into, okay, this is getting creepy now.
Yeah.
And what should I do? Should I just ghost them? Yeah, should I mute the conversation? Should I block them? I don't know. So any advice on that? Much appreciated.
Oh, well, listen, I'm the wrong person to take advice from with that. And but here's a true thing that I don't think a lot of people understand. Um, as Elvis tribute artists, we're very fortunate that we get to kind of ride the coattails of the best entertainer of all time. All right. Elvis Presley, though, had uh, a great group of people around the Memphis Mafia, around him. He had people that insulated him from a lot of that. That being said, you hear stories all the time about Elvis, getting a letter and writing back and all kinds of stuff like that. He was um, reachable, you could say, but he did have people insulating him. Guys like you and me, we don't necessarily have that because you're not at that level. Even if you're the top guy in the Elvis tribute artist world, you're still kind of in the Elvis tribute artist world. You're in this box. So fans want access, and rightfully so, and you want to give them access. But there are moments in time, don't you think, that it goes like, I didn't want to let anyone rent quite that much space in my life or my head or my time. You know what I mean? It's not because
Oh,
you're a bad human being. It's just because if you did that for everyone, you would have zero time for yourself, your family, friends, just you being you, right?
100%. It's we occupy this kind of weird space because we can kind of become famous, quote unquote, but we are famous for portraying somebody else who was, you know, fame on a whole other level, right? Something that's ultra, that is like the most famous entertainer who ever lived, who was seen by up to and over a billion people and aloha from Hawaii. So we're kind of custodians of that, but at the same time, we can kind of be the focus of individuals'
Right.
fandom of Elvis and their fantasies as well. Let's be honest. We're going on stage, we're dressing in the same outfits as him. We're trying to portray his charisma, his talent. We're trying to just capture a little bit of that stardust if we can, right? And some people will really connect with that, and they will see Elvis in us. And that's what we're doing on stage, right? We, for the audience, we want to just create that illusion as best we can that everyone can buy into. It's a suspension of disbelief, of course. We all know we're not Elvis. We're just creating a fun illusion for the evening. But people can take that further, and they can pour that love and that admiration of Elvis into us, and then it can spill over into this kind of beyond that point. In a way, we're kind of lucky because we get to live like Elvis on stage, but we actually get to just be ourselves off stage. And that's a good thing, actually, I think, because Elvis, you could say, well, why wouldn't you want to be Elvis? It's like, I wouldn't want to be stuck in my home and not be
Right.
able to walk down the street and buy some groceries or just go to the movie theater at a normal time without having to rent it out at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever, because you've got to avoid people. That's going to not only is that going to be depressing, but it's going to really affect your psychology, your mentality after a while. Years and years of that, it's going to really have a detrimental effect on your mental health. So we get that kind of nice sort of we get some of the good stuff, but then we can just put it aside, just say I'm just me. But fans and fandom can end up crossing those lines as well. So we have to be kind of careful how we manage that, because the last thing we want to do is upset Elvis fans, because
Yeah.
we are just representing him, right? And it's so important that we live up to that image to them. But at
Yeah.
the same time, we have to look after ourselves too.
Absolutely. It's like it's a fine line. You're absolutely right. I think you have the right of it though when you're saying that it's nice to be able to, do your thing on stage and then just, take it off and be yourself off stage. Not every guy does that, but I believe that the most professional guys and the best human beings in the Elvis tribute artist business are the ones that do that. So
Absolutely.
that's just my opinion. So listen, you've been, I was going around. I've talked to, and eventually I'm going to have a lot of your brothers from England on here. I'm sure. Um, I get along with a lot of them. It's just communication's not always the easiest. But here's the bottom line: I do some research and whatnot, and I see your name coming up again and again and again. And I was like, well, I'm going to reach out to this guy, and you got right back to me. It was awesome. So thank you for that. But you know, in preparing to have you on, I'm like, well, let's get to know this guy a little bit better. You've had a heck of a career, man, and you've been doing it for quite a while. How did you get started? Number one, because I don't think that there's like that big of a difference. Do you know Toki Toyokazu?
I've never met him, but I've seen him.
Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, he's from Japan. We talked about it briefly, and he'll be on in a future episode, but we're just trying to get all the subtitles right and everything.
Yeah.
But it's a different thing for like a guy like Toki in Japan, where there's definitely a language barrier. There's definitely a visual barrier, as opposed to someone like yourself from England. You look like an American. You look like, and yes, there's an accent, but there's no language barrier. But I still wonder, like, is there any difference to, like, for me growing up, I didn't know anything about Elvis, but Elvis was around. Everybody knew Elvis. In England, was it the same for you? How did you get started? Was there early love, or was it just thrown at you? How did it start? I like to hear how that connection was first made, because, like myself, I grew up knowing nothing about Elvis. So I just like to hear everybody's little story, because it's always impressive how that has defined their path in their ETA career. So let's hear it.
Well, thank you, first of all, Ryan. Yeah, I have had a long career, very fortunate career, I think. You know, being an Elvis tribute was not my life plan. It was just something that happened organically. And I think going back to what you were saying about, the culture, when I was a kid, I mean, Elvis, I guess a bit like with Americans loving the Beatles, right? It's it doesn't feel wrong. It's just it's a different culture, but it musically and the appeal of it doesn't change, I don't think, whether you're whichever side of the pond you're from. And the same I'd say is with Elvis in the UK. Elvis is huge in the UK. And when I was growing up, I have a distinct memory when I was about 5 years old. I think I was about 5 years old, and I was just looking through my mom's record collection, and she had a 40 greatest hits album of Elvis. I don't know if they had this album in the States, but it was a collection. And I just liked the cover. It was just this sort of art picture of Elvis's face. And he had this, lovely big smile with the, the lip and everything. And I just thought, oh, that's a nice face. He seems friendly. And I just asked my mother, what it was. And she said, that's the king of rock and roll. That's Elvis Presley. Didn't know what that meant. Was curious, put the record on, and it was Blue Suede Shoes, Hound Dog, Jailhouse Rock, King Creole, all those, that first side, it was all those classic 50s rock and rolls. And I honestly, Ryan, I feel like it just blew my mind. Hearing rock and roll for the first time, hearing Elvis singing. And, I had no idea who he was. I hadn't seen any video of him. I'd just seen this art picture of him. That's all I knew as a reference for him. But I just listened to this record over and over and over, and I just danced around in the living room and sang along to it. So I think it got into my brain so young. And they say about kids being so impressionable. It's always easier to learn a musical instrument when you're a kid and all that kind of thing. I think hearing Elvis music so young, it just that was music to me. There was other music I heard too and I liked, but that was the core of it. That was the thing that really excited me. So as I grew up, I was always interested in Elvis, and I just started collecting more albums. People would buy stuff for me for my birthday or for Christmas and introduce me to more stuff. And I remember the first time I watched Aloha from Hawaii, when I was probably about 8 or 9 years old. We hired the video, and we sat and watched it. And again, it was just opening up this, because the thing is with Elvis, when you first discover Elvis, it's amazing, but then you realize there's all this extra depth, all these extra layers, all these eras of Elvis that you discover, and all these different sounds, all these different genres of music. And the fact that Elvis was able to communicate so beautifully in whatever genre he chose. And that's what is, I think, so wonderfully appealing about Elvis so consistently. It's so great to listen to Elvis, whether he's singing Hound Dog or Are You Lonesome Tonight, or whatever it might be, Hurt, any kind of era, or you listen to the amazing soul sound he has on the American Sound Sessions in '69, singing, Suspicious Minds, A Long Black Limousine, whatever it is. He was able to emote through his music. He was so genuine through his music that you really felt whatever he was talking about, whatever he was singing about, you believed him. And that might sound trite, but a lot of people don't have that power, I don't think, to really communicate on that level. And then you add in the fact that he was one of the greatest live performers of all time, an incredible natural mover. I don't want to say a dancer so much because he wasn't a trained dancer. He was a mover. He moved to the music. He felt the music. It wasn't contrived. It wasn't, this is my routine, unless it's a movie routine. But he was just feeling the music and translating that. And I think that's what people were so spellbound by when he first came on the scene in the mid 50s, when he made his television appearances, in that it wasn't just someone singing beautifully describing something. It was someone actually emoting and feeling and putting that energy of a song, even if it was quite simple lyrically, which most of those early songs, rock and roll songs, were. He was actually performing with every essence of his body, and that was exciting. It was a whole new frontier, I think, of live performance. So to try and summarize, I think like anybody else, whether you're from America or from the UK or from Japan or whatever it might be, we can all identify with that quality of communication through music. And it doesn't matter how many times you've heard a song, it's still as exciting the 50,000th time to me as the very first time.
That's awesome. You know what? It's funny. I literally, I listened to everything you just said, and it clicked to me. I know why you're successful just by hearing the way you talked about it, because you get it. And you get the things that a lot of people don't take the time to wrap their head around, like the why, not just the like, oh, I see it, I'm going to mimic it. There's a why behind it, that Elvis never thought of, because he was just being himself.
Exactly.
And I think that to a degree the best tribute artists are the ones who get it inside their body and then just forget it and go out and don't think about it, like Elvis didn't think about it. But part of that journey is understanding, and you just described it so eloquently, how he wasn't a dancer, he was a mover. And it didn't come from him saying, okay, on this song, I need to, this is Polk Salad, Annie, guys. So make sure that I'm doing this. Okay, everybody got that. That's not what happened. He
No,
felt it. He was just feeling it. And what's really incredible and what we're not necessarily blessed with having is multiple uh we do a little bit, I guess, Elvis on tour and Suspicious Minds, like on tour, that's the way it is. Aloha. All three were different in terms of how he performed them. And obviously, age and everything comes into play. But it is interesting how, Elvis wasn't out there the whole time saying, okay, hey guys, get ready. I'm going to do this right here. Okay. That's not what he was doing. He was feeling
no.
it in the moment. Every performance was different, you know? Um, I think that's awesome. Just how you really laid that out so brilliantly,
Thank you.
uh, in ways that I've always thought about it, but I've never really been able to put it into words. So that's awesome. Given your, and I mean that, that's like really, wow, that's advanced insight. It's really cool. Um,
Thank you.
that understanding though, obviously has benefited you, in terms of being a performer, doing this thing, this Elvis tribute artist thing, where your job is to, Elvis's music lives on. We just provide the body, you know. Um, what's your approach to a show? What is your approach? Are you out there, trying to hit every little moment that Elvis did, or are you kind of just being you, or are you more interested in hitting the notes, or are you more interested in just entertaining the audience? What's your mindset going into a performance?
It's a very good question. And I think it's tricky because as you alluded to, that Elvis was just being Elvis, right? Whereas we're trying to be Elvis, but we're not Elvis. So how does that manifest in how we perform? And I think, you know, the balance that I try to strike, and everyone's different, everyone has a different approach, but my approach is to try and seem like him. If that's, it's maybe not the best word, but it's a good word for it, is that I can't look exactly like him. No one looks exactly like him. No one sounds exactly like him. No one moves exactly like him. But you want to try and create that feel of him, that he's there. And I think it's therefore a balance between recreating what he did, but also you have to be in the present moment because you are giving a live performance to a live audience. And, there are some guys I've seen where they have literally not just memorized an exact dance sequence, but they've memorized an exact speech from a specific show and they've just said it on stage. They've even said they're in Las Vegas and we're not. We're in, we're somewhere in England, right? So it's like the problem with that is that yes, Elvis did that, but he would not do that if he was here. So I think the real skill of being a performer and looking at it from an actor's point of view, and I'm from a family of actors and you know um, musicians and what have you. So I have that kind of instinctual background for what I grew up with. Is that you need to render the character, and you need to have a good understanding of the character, and you need to know what those points are that people expect to see, expect to hear. But at the same time, you have to be in the present moment on that stage with those people, connecting with those people and doing things that you think Elvis would do. And again, that's only comes from a deep, I think, knowledge of Elvis, the ability to really observe Elvis, not just literally, okay, he sings that note, he moves his hand in that way. It's actually to observe his whole sense of spirit and the way he moves, the way he feels, so that you can embody that without thinking about it. Because you don't want to overthink too much on stage, because people can see when you're overthinking on stage, it becomes obvious, I think. So you need to be in that you need to be in that zone where you're relaxed and you're confident, but everything you're doing kind of feels like Elvis. And it's not an easy thing to do. I think I'm quite fortunate and I'm quite a good observer of these things. I think I've got an innate ability for it. But if people don't, I think it's something that one of the best things you can concentrate on as an Elvis tribute is to really just get a sense of the feel of a person and try and translate that feel rather than just either being completely unlike him at all, which can be dissatisfying to an audience if you decide you're not even going to bother trying to be like him, or the other way and you're trying to be so accurate that tonight I'm doing June 10th, 1975 in Memphis, Tennessee, and I'm wearing the Indian feather and I'm going to do that exact set list. And I did that when I started, by the way. I went too far that way. And people don't get it. So you've just got to find that right balance.
Oh, I love you. I love you. You're brilliant. This is awesome. I love the fact that you have that background too. I don't have that background, but was in a movie. Kind of crazy. And did a lot of actor training out in Hollywood and whatnot with D.W. Brown and a number of other people. But one of the
Nice.
big things is like, one of the big things is like, you know, in terms of your lines and scenes and whatnot, like memorize it, so you know it by rote and then forget it,
Yeah.
you know, and that's like the same thing. I think when it comes to, lines are lines. Okay. Lines are lines, whatever. But like, there's more than just lines to acting or performing or whatnot. There's like this thing that you're embodying. And I think you have to learn it as an ETA. You have to learn it and know it, feel it in your body. Your body, everybody's body's different. There's people that have more rhythm than others. There's all these things, but you need to learn it, bring it into your own body, translate it there, and then forget it. So
Yeah.
it's there and you're feeling it. You're feeling it because Elvis was feeling it in his way. You're now feeling it in your own way, even though it's influenced by what you had learned and forgot. That's
Yeah.
that's like that's the best. And man, it's so cool. I think you understand this when you are in that moment and there's just this little voice in the back of your head. You can hardly hear it because you're in this moment. And you're like, you know what? I'm in the zone here. Yeah, I'm in it.
Yeah.
I'm in it. I don't even want to hear that voice.
You don't hear too much because then you'll pull you
Yeah,
straight out because then your
but
brain will engage too much.
right. But like you'll hear it, you'll be like, yeah, I'm in the zone. This is awesome. I love
Yeah,
it. Yeah, that's
100%.
that's cool. Have you before, during, whatever, being from a family of actors and whatnot, uh, have you performed in any roles other than Elvis?
Yeah, when I actually didn't want to, just to give some background. I didn't want to be a performer when I was growing up. I was like the quiet one in the family. I was kind of the nerdy kid, and it was yeah, like yourself. There we go. I had an older brother who he went to drama school, and he was the performer. He was played the lead in all the school plays. They had a picture of him on the wall in the school, and and I was just the quiet, one that no one ever noticed. But I loved Elvis, so that was my motivation for performing. But so that got me into it. That got me started. But I never really had a plan like, okay, I want to be this person, I want to be that person. So I just followed my instincts. I just followed what I liked and just saw it where it went. I mean, another band I'm really into is Queen. I love Queen, and Freddie Mercury is another a hero of mine. So I randomly just auditioned for a Queen tribute band about 15, 16 years ago now, a long time ago. And I got the job. So for a while I did Freddie as well. Not very well, I have to admit. Not a very good Freddie guy. But I loved it, right? I loved the music, so I think that helped and translated it. So I did a Queen versus King versus Queen show
Oh
for a
wow.
while. So that was good fun.
Oh yeah.
Very hard to sing after a while of doing both of those guys at the same time. And I also got into, as a side thing, there was a bit of a cabaret burlesque revival. I don't know if you remember that from like the mid to late noughties, 2005 to 2010, that kind of time. There, Dieter Von Teese, the burlesque movie, all that stuff. So there was a real revival of that going on in the UK in particular, in the theaters here. So I got into doing that. Again, someone just saw me doing Elvis and then they brought me in to do Elvis and that, but then I did some other characters as well. I was also a huge fan of, I don't know if you know Andy Kaufman,
Oh yeah.
very famous American, not a comedian. He didn't describe himself as a comedian, but as an entertainer. And I used to do Andy Kaufman. So I used to do Kaufman's, Latka Kat, thank you very much. And I used to do him turning into Elvis in shows. And I also used to do Tony Clifton. I don't know if you know of Tony Clifton. I'm like, man, I'm Tony Clifton. I
Yeah.
respect, but ain't fair. And did that whole kind of silly character with the pink tuxedo. And that was great fun because that was a license just to be terrible
Right,
and
right, right.
ridiculous. Because that was the whole joke, right? With that character is that he's this terrible Las Vegas entertainer, and the joke is that he's awful, but people don't know that he's supposed to be, so everyone sort of feels a bit awkward about it. So that was great fun. So I had fun sort of going off on those tangents for a while, but I always came back to Elvis because Elvis was my core love as a performer. And eventually I just ended up going full time doing Elvis. I also did the Blues Brothers with my actual brother for a while as well, which was good fun. So, lots of little tangents, lots of things that just I grew up with, characters that I liked, music that I liked, and I just played around with. I didn't have this grand plan about being this great entertainer or this is where I'm going with stuff. I just tried stuff that just appealed to me.
That's awesome, man. And that's probably why you're successful. I mean, when you're doing things you want to do and things you love, you tend to be more invested and
Yeah,
therefore more
exactly.
successful, right? That's
Yep.
yeah. uh Musically, obviously you're musical. You can sing and all these things. And I think what a brilliant idea, King and Queen show.
Yeah.
That's a
If you can pull it
wild
off.
boy. If you can even come close to pulling that off, that says a lot. But
I used to actually, just an aside there, I used to do Queen the first half, and I'd spend a few days before the show growing Freddie Mercury
shave it off.
mustache and then just shave it off in the interval. So
Brilliant.
nice. There you go.
That's
Only
awesome.
worked about a few days beforehand off, of course, but anyway.
That's awesome. Um, do you play any musical instruments? Anything like that at all?
Pretty badly. I've got a couple of guitars in the background there. It's one of those things, musical instruments is the things that because the way my brain works is that I get very nerdy about something and I really get into it.
Hmm.
And with music, it's really been about loving these genres and these musicians, but not actually being a real creative musician personally. I don't sit down and think, oh, I want to write a song today. What am I going to write? I'm like, no, I actually I'm more of an interpretive artist. That's what I like. I like seeing something and then trying to copy it. So I've only ever written one song. That's it. I wrote a song for my wife for her birthday, and that was it. But again, it was in the style of Elvis. So, it wasn't my thing. I wouldn't know what to do. If someone said you be you, I'd be like,
Right.
I don't know who that is. Who am I? If I'm on stage, I'm playing Elvis or I'm playing another character. That's what I like doing because I like putting my observational skills into action and trying to recreate something. That's what kind of gets me going.
I totally see it. No doubt about it. That's awesome. I went through a period of songwriting and whatnot. I really like that space. Not that I'm good at it. I like um I don't know, like, and honestly, like the songwriting thing is second. It's not about me like having something very important to say here. I just like the kind of the creative process of it, and
Sure.
I love sitting down at a piano and just I'm not a piano player, but just sitting down and just like melodies and oh, that sounds neat. What about that? And um, so, but I get what you're saying, and I'm like left to my own devices, JD. I am the biggest geek nerd in the world. I mean, I started a book club with another podcast I have, for crying out loud. And it's about ancient ruins and Göbekli Tepe and all kinds of stuff like that. So I'm like a real, like, I'm a geek's geek. I'm
That
proud
sounds
of
like
it.
the kind of stuff I watch on YouTube all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Amazing.
So,
Love it.
but it is interesting how these worlds cross in this
Yeah.
beautiful Elvis world, Elvis tribute artist world. And um you're now, we're getting up into the teens of people that I've been able to interview and talk to. Like I said, the first one from England, but it's really kind of cool just to hear all these stories and how different everyone is, this melding pot of just different paradigms and why they are here doing it, what motivated them to do it, why it's exciting to them, and their attitude towards it. And while some ways everything's the same, in many ways they're all different, and we all find a way to get to this one place. It's kind of
Well,
exciting.
we're all united by Elvis, and what I've always found to be really nice about the Elvis community, and it's something that I actually didn't get involved in until the last few years. I've spent years and years just doing my own thing. But it was after COVID I decided I'll try going to an Elvis festival, go to a competition. I'll try these things. And the thing I've enjoyed the most is the social side, because we all share this very unique thing of
Yeah.
recreating Elvis Presley. And but what, like you said, Ryan, is what's so nice about it is there's so many people from different walks of life who come at it from different angles and for maybe slightly different reasons, but we're all united in our love of Elvis. And it's just incredible the effect that one person can have on so many people, not just the people who are fans of Elvis who come and see our shows, or people who don't like Elvis tributes, but they just love Elvis, whoever they are, we're all united by that power that he still has over our lives. And I think it's incredible. I mean, when I was starting out over 20 years ago, I was thinking to myself, would I still be doing this in 20 years? Maybe it will died out by then, because when I started, so many people associated with Elvis were still alive. It was only just about 25 years since he died. But now what's amazing to me is it still feels so culturally powerful and relevant. The amount of kids who come to see my shows and they're dressed in Elvis jumpsuits and they say, I want to be an Elvis tribute when I'm older, and can you give me advice and blah blah blah. And I think, wow, you're just like me. I mean, how do you even know about Elvis? But I guess they probably just discovered it in a similar way to I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's something so universal about Elvis. He's both completely of his time, but completely timeless at the same time, because his appeal is timeless.
Yeah. I got involved in this business on a dare. Oftentimes talk about that, enter a contest, and knew nothing about Elvis. But this was in the mid to late '90s, when this was all going on, and it's just very fortunate how everything happened for me, anyways. I was at the right place at the right time so many times as to be unbelievable. But there was a moment in time, the end of the '90s into the 2000s, that in America, uh, there was a special thing going on. And as far as Elvis Tribute Artist World, that was like a heyday, you might
Sure.
say. Um, and since then, I mean, it has grown, but it's changed.
It
It's
has.
changed.
It has
Oh,
changed.
a lot of guys I talked to, a perfect example, Dean Z. You probably know who Dean Z is. He lives
Yeah, I know Dean. Yeah,
just a
yeah.
few miles down the road from me here in Branson. But Dean goes over to the UK quite a bit. Sean Clush goes over to the UK quite a bit, and they talk about how um, the UK today reminds them of what it was in America, maybe back in, like I said, like in the late '90s, early 2000s.
Really, that's interesting. Okay.
There's a really cool vibe about it going on, I guess, right now in the UK. You're in the middle of it. Sometimes, when you're on the field, you can't see what's going on like you can on the sidelines, So you're right in the middle of it. You might not realize that, but do you sense that at all? Do you feel that at all, or is it just, well, this is the way it is?
That's a very good point. You're right. This is where I do most of my work. I do a few things in other places, but this is mostly it. So this is what I'm used to. And it's easy to assume um that things are similar in other places. I mean, when I have been to Memphis and done some shows in Memphis, I did actually, it did feel a little different actually. Obviously sometimes there are obvious things like certain songs are really big in some regions because they got to number one or whatever, but didn't somewhere else, and things like that. But sometimes the culture can feel a little different, and I found that really, really interesting. And it's heartening to know that the UK is seen as a good space for Elvis, But my personal experience, I'm working, every weekend I'm somewhere doing shows, and I'm always meeting people of all ages who just love Elvis. And maybe part of it is the fact that Elvis never visited here,
Yeah.
you know, and it's obviously been a long time since he was touring, of course. But if you were in the US, he was, especially, in the South, what have you, he was constantly touring in the 70s. There are so many people who would have seen him,
Yep.
and family members of people who saw him and had that direct connection with him. But he's almost maybe more of a mythical character in this country and pretty much any other country. because he was never here. So we're only ever sort of buying into that mythology and that idea of Elvis. And maybe that creates a greater sense of longing for him because we never got that. You know, people love to talk about how when he flew to Germany, he landed at Prestwick Airport in Scotland for an hour or something, and then flew on to Germany. And you know, people go to Prestwick Airport and they say that's where the plane was. And he came inside and used that phone to call home. And they've still got the phone plugged in, I think, you know, for people to see. And that seems kind of crazy, right? It's like he was here for like an hour, but people still like they even talked about doing a festival around that idea a year or two ago, that in that location, saying
Wow.
Elvis was here, you
Wow.
know. So it's like that might sound ridiculous, but that's the closest we got, right? That's all we had. That's all we had to work with.
Right.
So maybe that's part of the reason why he's still so powerful in this country, you know, because it's that tease. We never really got him.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of cool. It's kind of like castles in the United States. You know, people go to Disney and they're like, "Oh my God, Disney castle," and then they go to Europe and they're like, "Oh, that's a castle." You
Yeah,
know,
we go to Disney, we're like, it's not real.
that's
Come
not
on,
really a castle.
what? You know.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's like us, thinking, yeah, that's a very good point. And it's the same thing too. Like, it's just in South America and in like Santiago, Chile, and I mean they're awesome. And there's a language barrier there too. And it just, it's like a wild time.
Yeah,
It's a lot of fun, man. It's a lot of fun. This is awesome. I love talking to you.
thanks, man.
So when you go on stage, okay, or maybe not go on stage, but when you're thinking Elvis, everyone has this thing that really kind of maybe is the elevated part of their admiration or love or like or whatever of Elvis. Some people are really into his voice, and some people are really into like, oh, I love the way he just moved. And some people just like the air, the confidence, the way he moved or whatever, the je ne sais quoi of whatever it was. Um, Myself, not being musical or anything like that, I was just like, the first time I saw him, I was like, I can't really stop watching this. And I don't know why. Um, there was this thing where I wanted to know what happened next. That's like a good book. You'll always get to the end of the chapter and you'll be like, oh, one more, one more. And next thing you know, it's 4 a.m. Um, that was Elvis to me. That was the thing that got me hooked. After I'd already started performing. What is it for you?
Wow, I think that's a great description to sort of say that you were hooked in that way, and it was like a good book that keeps driving you to the next chapter. I think that's a great way to look at it because I feel like that's part of what motivates so much of the Elvis world, is that we wanted more. You know, we still want more. We can't really get it. Maybe we can see things we didn't get to see at the time. Maybe there's bits of footage or something that might be released or recordings, but Elvis always leaves you with that sense of wanting more. And for me, it's not so much a specific thing, like it's just his voice. Or I think it's kind of an amalgam of everything in the sense that I just like the guy. I love the guy, right? And I just like looking at him. I like seeing what he's doing. I quite happily just watch Elvis just sitting in a diner eating a burger. I don't know, or just talking to him to ask him a few questions about life. It's just one of those people that just draws you in. And there are people in life. I remember hearing a story about Jack Nicholson, right? You know, man with huge charisma. And I don't know exactly where it was, but there was a party. There was some kind of big party in LA or something. You know, this was decades ago. And there were lots of people at the party, but then they realized that all the women were sort of disappearing from the room. And after a while, it was just some guys in the room. They thought, where are all the women gone? So they looked around and they went upstairs and they opened the door to a bedroom. And there's Jack Nicholson just sitting on the bed with his legs crossed, not really saying anything. And all the women are just surrounding him. And they're all talking and giggling and they're just hanging out with him. He's not doing anything. He's just kind of just, saying the odd thing, laughing, joking.
Right.
He just had that magnetic personality. People just wanted to be near him. And I think Elvis, obviously, unfortunately, neither of us had the opportunity to actually experience that. But we know that he had that. And we get that through the television. We get that through the screen. We get that through the record. We get some of that magic. We don't get all of it. it must have, people talk about it being electric when Elvis entered the room. He had an incredible presence. And I think that's so much of what it is that not only drives people to go and see an Elvis tribute show or go and see the Elvis movie with Austin Butler or buy the latest compilation CD, or maybe they've released a new take of something, because it's just trying to get a bit of that extra sort of stardust that we're kind of hooked on, because it's kind of like a drug almost. And for me, I think as a performer, you kind of have that same thing. It's like maybe I can just capture some of that essence that is so appealing to me by donning the outfit, doing my hair, my makeup, and maybe today I can get that little bit closer to him and get those moments where I kind of feel like him, because it's intoxicating. Elvis was an intoxicating human being for that reason.
Yeah. 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 Oh man, just imagine having that, being that dude.
Yeah, I know.
Um, yeah. Wow. Um, what's your home life like? I mean, on a personal level, you said you're married. What do you like to do outside of being, on stage performing? Is there like, are you a mountain climber, or, ride a
Ah,
skateboard or whatever? What is it like, just, being you outside of this Elvis world?
I am very boring. I've always been that way, right? Um, I mean, people make jokes about it. I mean, I just give you an example, right? When I was 8 years old, my eighth birthday, I decided I was too old for a traditional birthday party with cake and games and stuff. So I invited five of my closest friends over. I put on a dressing gown, pretending it was a smoking jacket, and I had one of those pipes that blew bubbles. And I put on classical music on the record player, and I got a glass of Coca-Cola, pretending it was brandy or whatever, put it in a brandy balloon. And I wanted to talk about politics and just talk about the world and philosophy, but everyone thought I was insane, right? So the point is, right, I'm one of those guys who's just, I'm a bit of a boring nerd. I don't party. I have done occasionally, right? Gone to parties, had fun, but I'm the kind of guy who finishes a show, comes off stage, and my first thought is, did it go okay? Did I not screw anything up? Okay, great. The client seems happy. I'm happy. As long as they're happy, I'm happy. And I go home and I put on YouTube, play a video game, stroke the cat, go to bed. I mean, I'm super boring like that. And it sounds terrible to say, but I'll just admit it, I mean, I'll be fun on stage, right? But off stage, I'm a kind of guy who I'm a student of history. I love, I spend hours and hours watching documentaries on YouTube about World War II, philosophy, all kinds of sort of subjects like that, the sort of the bigger picture of life I love to
Yeah.
delve into. And then to just relax, sometimes I'm really into technology. I used to run a technology and news review website a few years ago, and video games. About 10 years ago, I wrote and presented a local TV show about video games called Board Gamers, that ended up on Amazon actually. So it was quite successful, but only lasted 2 or 3 years. Then it kind of just fizzled out. But so that was like that's my other sort of passion that I think about when I'm not performing.
Right.
But yeah, in general, just kind of a boring nerd, really.
Well, nothing wrong with that. Trust me. I am that nerd. No doubt about it.
Good man. Good man.
So let's get into the Elvis thing. What's your favorite Elvis Presley song to perform? Just to listen to as a fan of what the music itself, and then to sing. So sing, vocally sing, to perform movements, whatever, and then just you being you. Is there an Elvis song that's your favorite? What are they?
My absolute favorite song, full stop, is Polk Salad Annie.
Oh,
I'm unapologetic about this. It's my favorite. It's probably to say it's my favorite to listen to feels a bit unfair, because there are so many more songs. I mean, polka is really a visual piece, right?
yeah,
It's not really a great singing number, but I do enjoy listening to it as well. And for those ultra nerds like me, the kind of Elvis fans who don't just buy the records, I've got dozens of bootleg albums of Elvis, right, from tons of concerts from the 70s. He loved Polk Salad Annie as well, and he actually really evolved it over the years. You listen to that version, the famous version from August 12th Midnight Show in 1970, that's the way it is, and you compare that to where it went in Elvis on Tour, Hampton Roads. And then from that, he didn't redo it in 73, but every year after that, 74, 75, 76, and in 77, he kept performing that song, kept evolving it, adding different instrumentation to it, guitar solo in the middle, changing it up. He obviously loved that song. And even when he wasn't feeling great, he'd often do it anyway. So I don't know what it is. It's swamp rock, right?
Yeah.
That's how they describe it. But I just love that song. And I actually have an album somewhere that I compiled all my favorite versions of that song that's just Polk Salad every track. But it's, one from 70, 71, 72. It's all my favorite sort of examples of it. So that's how, again, terrible nerd that I am. That's my favorite Elvis song. It's my favorite song in general. My favorite to sing, God, there are so many. I actually would probably say one that I very rarely do, but I do enjoy singing is Rags to Riches.
Oh,
It's a hard song to sing, but it's actually I think it's if you're in the pocket, right? You're in the zone. It's actually really fun to sing that. It's a really cool song. Um, there are so many technical songs with Elvis. There are so many songs that are beautifully emotive, and of course his early stuff is, especially if you're trying to do that rock sound, you're trying to do like Big Uncle Love or something from 58, that's that gruff edge. Or if you're trying to do stuff from the 68 special with it, that's quite hard to try and recreate that sound. So it's great, but it's maybe slightly stressful. But I think something like Rags to Riches is just it's just a really cool song. And Elvis just threw his voice at it. I think he only did one or two takes of it. And he just had fun with it. So I think that's if your voice is in the place for that, I think that's a great fun one just to throw your voice at.
yeah, yeah. What's your favorite era? Do you perform all eras still, or do you? What's your favorite era to perform?
I still just about do all 3 years. I do a theater show called Elvis the Legend where I go through
Yeah,
each era, and I have little sort of soundscapes in between where I do the changes. When I was a kid, like I told you, when I first discovered Elvis, it was all about the 50s. But
yeah.
by the time I was a teenager, I was the complete opposite. I was 70s guy, totally 70s guy. So when I did my first show when I was 18, I had an American Eagle jumpsuit made, and I had big stick-on sideburns because I couldn't grow them yet, and my hair like this. And because that's what I was into. I was just so a 70s guy. But then as the years went by, I kind of went backwards and started doing the 68 stuff. And I always liked the 68 special, but then I added it into the show. And like I said earlier, one of the cool things about Elvis is there's so many places you can go musically with Elvis that there's always something you can sort of to me, it never fundamentally gets boring. I think, I mean, Elvis recorded what, over 700 songs, something like that. Obviously, there's plenty of movie tracks that are not, the most memorable, but there's a lot of stuff there from all kinds of genres, country, soul, rhythm and blues, rock and roll, ballads. You've got so much variety there that there's always somewhere interesting to go. And even when you're on stage, you can think, because you always try and do the stuff that's most popular. But sometimes you think, oh, we could try this, or someone requests something random that you haven't sung in years, and you go, that'd be a fun one to do. So, yeah, I mean, to give you a long-winded answer to your question, I do a bit of everything. But if I had to just pick one thing, it would be the 70s every time.
Okay, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Great music in the '70s. What is your favorite part of being an ETA?
I think the best part of being an ETA is it might sound kind of schmaltzy to say it, but I think it's really just about the positive effect you can have on people because Elvis's music and his legacy is so powerful still that I think what you can if you're doing your job right, you can have an incredible effect on people and in a positive way, an emotionally positive way.
Sure.
The number of people who can come up to me after a show and they can say, oh, you sang The Wonder of You, and that was my husband's song, and he's no longer with us. And I was crying all the way through it. And, you know, it's so easy to take these things for granted. I mean, one of the most difficult shows I ever did was singing for a man who was dying, and he was in his deathbed, and they brought me in to sing some Elvis songs for him because he loved Elvis. He apparently hadn't spoken for weeks at this point, but I started singing to him, and he started singing along. And then when I finished, he asked me some questions and he was talking and he brightened up, all because of Elvis. So I think it's so easy to forget and get caught up in all the minutiae of the look and the sound and the songs and doing this and doing that. But ultimately, what really matters is the positive effect that we can have for the people who are putting money in our pockets, the people who are buying tickets, and they just want to have that evening of not just entertainment, but you have no idea sometimes what some of these songs might mean to people, what they relate to in their lives. And it's incredible hearing those stories sometimes. So for me, that is by far the most gratifying thing about being an Elvis tribute.
Absolutely. That's awesome. What's the worst part?
The worst part is walking down the street, people going, "Hey, Elvis."
Do you get that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But well, obviously, with when you got the hair, it's unavoidable. No, in all seriousness, I mean that's not the worst thing. But I don't know. I mean, I've sometimes thought in my life, well, is this my purpose in life? Is this the right thing to do? Because I'm spending my life pretending to be someone else. Not literally. I'm not like some ETAs who will live the gimmick, right? Who will
Right.
always act like Elvis. I'm not like one of those people. I just go on stage, play the character, and I come off and I'm me. But I've had those moments in my life where I just thought, is this all like this is what I should do?
Right.
Because what I'm doing is I'm effectively just trying to recreate someone else's work. Obviously, you're applying it to the people in front of you. And like I said about making people happy and all that kind of thing, it's really important and it makes you feel good. So that's a really good thing. But I've often had that sense of, you know, should I get a real job, quote unquote? Should I do something for me? Should I do something have some creative outlet? And sometimes I feel sad about that because I feel like I haven't done that enough in my life. But then I come back to performing and it's not always fun. Not every show is brilliant. Sometimes you don't feel great. Sometimes you have a bad night. There's all these things happen. But if I'm consistent, if I know I'm still doing something good with my life, if people are consistently getting something positive out of seeing me, and if the feedback is good and people are telling me these things, and people write me letters and they tell me things all the time. I mean, even just I won't say exactly, but I had a long conversation with a very famous ETA the other day who told me that he was a big fan of my work and stuff like that. It's like, wow, you know, it you need to remember that and keep that in your heart and remember that actually what you're doing is of great value, even if it isn't like original. It's still your version of something that is still means a hell of a lot to a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I've struggled with that same sentiment in my life too. Have I wasted um the God-given, gifts or whatever that have been given? Have I wasted it? Have I squandered it? Or is this, where I should be? And it's an interesting question. And on any given day, I might have a different answer, you know? So it's kind of interesting. If you had 1 hour with Elvis Presley today, you could go back in time or you could talk to him right now. However it happens, let's put ourselves in this, fantasy space where you have an hour to talk to Elvis. What would you talk about? What would you say? What would the conversation be?
Wow, what a question. What a question. Honestly, I think I would just want to get to know the man on a personal level. And I think I'd want to, because I'm the kind of person who I'm a people pleaser at
Mhm.
heart. That's what I like to do. I grew up that way. I've always been that way. So I think my instinct would be to try and connect with him on the things that he was personally passionate about. I wouldn't want to be the guy who's like, why did you record that song? Or why did you perform like that? Or, you know, Elvis is probably going to say, well, I don't even remember what you're talking about, because it's clear in my mind, but it's not going to be in his mind because it was years ago or whatever. If I'm talking to him, let's say in the mid 70s, I think I would want to connect with him about his philosophies on life and his interest in spirituality and searching for answers. The books he was into, the impersonal life and all the things that he was passionate about, because he was, they're talking about him as a seeker, right?
Searching.
He he was
Yeah.
always searching for answers about his purpose. And so I think what would be potentially the most enriching conversation would be to talk about life's purpose with Elvis and to get a sense of his philosophy, because he talked about writing a book. I think he was going to call it Through My Eyes, but he never did. So in a sense, it could be a little bit of a window into that, into his sort of his perspective on life and the big picture and why we're all here. I think that could have a bigger impact than me just asking him a sort of dweeby question about why he wore a particular outfit or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I tend to probably be in that camp as well. Like it would probably be very little about him as a entertainer. As an ETA, I feel like I've absorbed as much as I can probably absorb visually. Yeah, there might be a question here or there, but it would not probably be as impactful in the grand understanding about asking about entertainment. I'd like to get to know the man. Yeah.
Because then you could say you really you had a sense of understanding who he was
Yeah. You get
rather
to
than
the
just what
source.
he rather than just what he did.
Right. Yeah. You get to the source of a person to understand them. In closing, I ask this sometimes and I don't, I'm going to ask you, and there's no right answer and there's no wrong answer here. Everybody has their opinion on it, and it's really brilliant to hear where people are coming from and why on this particular question. I'm going to talk to you about the ultimate Elvis Tribute Artist Contest. Now, there are guys out there who will measure their entire life's success based upon one day getting that title and or winning and getting to the ultimate whatever level it is. There are guys out there who say I would not enter a contest to save my soul. There are guys out there who are kind of on the fence about it. There's guys that are bitter about it. There's guys that could win but don't care. There's this whole realm of opinions, thoughts, and whatnot about it. You've not, for so far as I know, have you entered any of the ultimate contests? Have you won? Have you been to Memphis based upon just the ultimate only?
No, no, I
Okay.
haven't.
And what's your thoughts on it? Is there a reason why? Is there, just what's your thoughts on it?
Well, like I said, it's a great question, right? And it really is because it's such an important one within the Elvis tribute world. It's kind of the elephant in the room in a way is the ultimate, right? And how important it is. And I think I'm a guy I'm an old school guy. I started performing. I was working in pubs and bars and clubs, restaurants, and I just came up that way. A lot of young guys I see today, I meet at these festivals and these competitions who have kind of grown up in that world. And it almost like someone who wants to, be a sports star. Let's say they go through the systems of the junior leagues and college football, and then they want to get to, the NFL, what have you. And it's almost like that's the approach they're taking to their career. So they didn't go through what I might call like that national service of just working for people with it. Because there's the Elvis world and then there's the kind of the general public. And they're not the same thing, in my opinion. There's crossover, but there's a difference between people who follow Elvis tributes and go to Elvis tribute festivals and know everything about this stuff. And then there are people who just walking down the street, see a poster for an Elvis show and think, oh, I like Elvis. I'll go and see that. It sounds like fun. And they have no idea who these people are or what it's got to do with anything. So trying to get to the point of this, I think it's a very personal thing based on what people's values are about what defines them as a performer. And for me, I've done a competitions. I've won a couple of competitions, but they weren't ultimate competitions. And it was great because it was life affirming for me because I'd never done anything like that. And I'd always been plagued with doubt in my head. I'm very critical of my own work. I'm always thinking I'm no good at this stuff. And so that made me feel good inside. But I think it really comes down to how people define their a personal value and that work value. If you've built your life around going to festivals and competitions, and that's how you started as a kid, then I think all roads lead to that, right? That's kind of what your sense of destination is. Like that's where I'm going. But if you've done it in the old-fashioned way, you've just gone out there and just done shows for the public, and you've built a career that way, completely divorced from any of that. I mean, I've been doing TV and theaters and stuff long before I ever did an Elvis competition, then I think it's easier for someone like me to say, I don't need that. I like the idea of it. Don't get me wrong. I think we all love the idea of going into a competition and appearing on that big stage. You know, I literally just did an ultimate qualifier last week. I didn't win. Is what it is. You move on. I felt sad about it, but then I had some conversations with some people, and they made me feel better about what I was doing. Like, don't allow that judgment to define you, and don't for a second think that that means that you're no good at what you do, because we don't think that about you. And that made me feel a lot better. And it brought me back to that place of like, what really matters is that I can sell what I'm doing based on my approach and my ability and how people buy into what I do. I don't need a title like that. It's nice to have one. And we all know, I don't know personally how things work with the ultimate, but we all know what people say about these things. And we all just like the Oscars, right?
Yes.
You know, does the best actor always win the Oscar?
Yeah.
No.
There's a lot of
Why?
politics.
Because there's a lot more to it, and let's not
Yeah.
be naive about it. And I think it would be naive to assume that the ultimate was had none of that. Let's put
Right.
it that way.
But the
Uh,
bottom line is it's subjective no matter what.
exactly. And that's the other point, is that you're not defined by what three or four judges have said in a single evening, watching you walk on stage, sing one or two songs where you're not allowed to interact with the audience.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to entertain. You're not even allowed to lie down or whatever it is, all these certain rules they have. Is that really a fair representation of you as a performer, as an entertainer, and your ability to
Elvis was never
portray
put in that
Elvis?
box. Elvis never was
No.
put in that box.
Now I can understand some of the reasoning why some of those rules are applied, not all of them, but some of them kind of make sense in some ways. But the point is, it's so artificial. The best judgment that you can have, I think, if you're good at what you do, is you can go out there in front of a room of strangers who've never seen you before, who've bought a ticket to your show, and they come up to you afterwards and they say, wow, what a great evening. And something that I've heard a few times in my career that I really take to heart is people saying, I'm not even an Elvis fan. I just came with my friend, but I really enjoyed that.
Yes,
I
that's
just,
the best compliment in the
that is
world.
the best compliment you can have in the world. And that has got nothing to do with any kind of competition.
Yeah.
And all of the baggage that goes with that, you know, let's be honest, it exists. We wish it didn't. So my message to anybody would be, look at Elvis, right? He went on the Grand Ole Opry and they told him to go back to his day job,
Yeah.
you know. Um, what the real value is in people who know nothing about this, seeing you perform, even and if they're not even an Elvis fan and they come away thinking I had a great night, then you're doing your job right. And that's what you should carry in your heart, not that I have to win this thing, otherwise my life has no meaning. It's like you could enter it every year for 20 years and never win it, and it could have nothing to do with how good you are. It could
Yeah.
have something to do with a million other things that are behind closed doors, or who knows, right? I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I don't know, but we've all heard the stories. We've all
Yeah.
seen various things. So I think that's just the best message anyone should put out there. So for me, I like the idea of, I tried entering it this year. I'll try another entry just because I'd like to try and experience it. I'd love to perform on that stage just once in
Yeah.
front of the original red Elvis sign from the 68 special, just as a fun thing.
Yeah.
And also it's good promotion to be seen by new people.
Sure.
And to win it is just a bonus. That's the way you have to look at anything in life, I think. Winning something is a bonus. It's not the be all and end all. Because if that's how you feel about it, I think you're forever going to be stressed in a way that it's not worth being. Life is too short to be that
Yeah.
stressed about something so that you have so little control over.
It's basically the concept that the destination is not as important as the journey.
Exactly. It's
You
all
know.
about the journey.
Yeah. Oh, man, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate it. I love your insight on the contest and the ultimate and whatnot. I think we're probably cut from the same cloth about a number of things. So it's very,
Absolutely.
very cool. Very cool.
Thanks,
Um,
Ryan.
how do people get a hold of you, follow you, social media, website, all that stuff?
Yeah, so yeah, here's the thing, right? Come and book me.
Yeah.
Book me for your shows, honestly. Ryan, give me a spot. No, yeah, seriously, just JD King Elvis. Just Google that. You'll find me on Facebook. Um, Instagram, all that stuff. jdkingelvis.co.uk is my website. If anyone's ever in the UK, fancy seeing a show, look me up. And or if you just want to see more of me talking Elvis or any of my stuff, just yeah, drop me a line sometime.
That's awesome. I hope to get this out to a lot of people because I know a lot of people in the States, you know, you get like you said, you have your Elvis fans and then you have just your general world. And I kind of live in the middle of two different worlds right now. I think three different worlds actually, because you've got the Elvis world, which I am a part of, but I'm not, because most of my career has been with Legends in Concert, which is a multi-act show.
Sure. Yeah.
And I love it because every day you have to go on stage realizing that these aren't Elvis fans. You'll get them once in a while, but I love when like a Taylor Swift fan comes in and it's like, oh, I didn't know anything about Elvis, but it was pretty cool. Or my favorite is a husband. He's like, my wife dragged me out to this show, but yeah, I never liked Elvis, but you're okay. You know, that's a great compliment.
What I say. That's the greatest compliment you can have. Someone who came in with an agenda, with an idea that I'm not going to enjoy this.
Right.
Yeah. And then at the end, they're like, that was great. You know, I really enjoyed it. I'm going to listen to some Elvis records. That is job done, right? That is the best thing you could do. That's the best way you can represent Elvis on this earth, I think.
Yep. And then I'm getting this whole other group of fans that have nothing to do with Elvis based upon my other podcast. So I live in this weird world. But what's funny about ETA Files is, so it's like a weird thing. It's like, I think maybe it's like a car accident that people can't turn away from. They just have to watch it, you know, and because people are really tuning in and they're like, I got to watch this. It's another dude. This time he's from England.
Another weirdo.
Yeah. It is kind of funny though. And I absolutely love, every once in a while you'll get a troll, you know, who's like, oh, go beat yourself. They don't get it, but you know, it's an interesting thing. And
it's a funny thing we do.
Yeah.
You know, it's a funny old job, but someone's got to do it. There's something I say. And, but you know what? There's an audience for it. And if we can make people happy, if we're actually having a positive effect, we're putting some happiness into the world.
Yeah.
It's not such a bad thing, right?
No, it's not at all, man. JD King, I appreciate you coming on, buddy. Thank you so much. We're going to get this out there and hopefully more folks in the United States, more folks in England, more folks all over the world will get to know you. I appreciate you so much, buddy.
My pleasure, Ryan. Thank you so much for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only JD King. Thanks for tuning in this week to the ETA Files. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And as always, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join the ETA Files community. And if you're looking for something a little different, be sure to stop by my podcast, The Ryan Files. Keep rocking, my friends, and I'll see you next week with another story from the Elvis Tribute Artist world. In the meantime, check out these video links below.